Oh, I just want to do a quick update for the channel here and this RX 570 13 GPU mining rig, as well briefly talk about the airflow and some things that I've been seeing online in terms of a lot of people are using grow tents. And basically, yeah, first of all, I'll just talk about our rig. It's been running pretty stable. I did have to make a couple adjustments here. I did make a really kind of half-assed video talking about there's that server PSU in the back there. It was giving me a voltage drop issue, so I took that apart and increased the voltage a little bit. So we went from around like 11.8 under load all the way up to now we're at about 12.2 volts while under load. So that definitely improves stability a little bit, I think. So I had to also move one of these GPUs, the Sapphire GPU I found. If you are using server PSUs to power your GPUs, occasionally when you restart the rig, I found some GPUs did not like using the server PSU, in the sense that when I restarted, when I had this Sapphire GPU on the server PSU, it would sometimes not load with the rest of the system. So when I moved it to the main ATX PSU, every time I restarted the system, it worked perfectly. Now, last thing in terms of airflow. A lot of people online are looking at building these custom grow tents, and I even looked into that stuff myself back about a year ago, back last November. And quite honestly, I did quite a lot of testing also for this summer, because I'm looking at, okay, how do I manage the heat? How do I keep my rigs cool while at the same time, of course, staying on a budget? Because the whole idea with the grow tent is to keep the rigs cool and potentially keep the heat away from the rest of the house. And what I had to end up doing is I did build like a small kind of test example. I used foam insulation, built a box around one of these Veta frames. So not this rig here specifically, but I had some other rigs as well. Those are 1660 Supers in the back there. But I did build kind of like a little box around it, and I used some of those pipes that people have. I used 8-inch pipes with 8-inch exhaust, so I had about 3 of them. And basically what I found is that's nowhere near enough airflow to actually keep your rigs cool, because what ended up happening is I boxed in my rig, but the temperatures were actually a lot worse than if I just left them open. And now, of course, the heat will go everywhere if you do not box in the rigs and kind of try to keep the heat coming out of those 2 or 3 little exhausts at the top or whatever people design their grow tents as. However, your GPU temps will go up significantly. I've seen online a lot of people building these custom grow tents, but they drastically underestimate how much airflow they actually are going to need in order to keep their rigs cool. And that's where, like, now that I've been mining for well over a year, I have a good sense that you need a ton of airflow actually to keep your rigs cool. And yes, I do need to get to removing those little red fans so that those white box fans can actually move a lot more air through the cards. But basically all I wanted to really talk about is, I don't say, like, if you are going to do a grow tent setup, definitely get a lot more exhausts. Don't just do 400 or 800 CFM. You're probably going to need upwards of 1600 to 2000 CFM. So you could be looking at 4 8-inch exhausts. And then the same deal, if you have 4 or 5 exhausts, that means you need 4 or 5 intakes. If you run screens, you probably need more intakes, because screens add air resistance. So there's a lot of things to consider. Obviously, me just showing this on video is not going to give you a good visual. But hang on one sec. You can see back here, sorry about the noise. You can see back here, I did buy a whole bunch of this like grow tent piping and stuff. Like I did try a lot of different things, and basically what I found is that going with these open air setups here worked a lot better, because it just gave you a lot more airflow in the cards, so you're not restricting and creating a lot of heat bubbles. So that's where using these like ducts and stuff, they can be good for moving air, but you need a lot of them. I had around 3 or 4 of these 32-foot ducts set up with these kind of air mover, whatever you want to call them. They're cheap. They were like $40 off Amazon or whatever. So I used those initially to help move air to where I'm mining. But then it turns out it just wasn't as good. And that's where, if you are going to use them, you need to set up a lot. You need 4, 5 different pipes for exhaust, 5 pipes for intake. And I'm only talking about like 1 or 2 rig setups. So you might be looking at like 8 to 16 cards, but do not underestimate how much power and how much heat they put out. because that'll be the biggest problem that you will run into when trying to make your mining setup. And yeah, basically in summary, this rig's running stable, and again, for cooling, I like this open air setup. In this particular part of where I am mining, it doesn't matter how hot it gets in here. It's kind of away from where everyone else is living, and that's what I suggest if you are doing a mining setup. Dedicate one room, dedicate a part of a building or whatever to where you're mining. Obviously, I'm nowhere near that scale. I only have a couple rigs. But try to isolate the heat away from the house. Of course, winter's coming, so that means there's a lot less work you have to do to manage the heat, the intake, the exhaust and stuff. But yeah, I personally, if you're going to do grow tent, do it properly with enough exhaust, or don't do it at all. Because that's all I can really say, is that if you're not going to commit to putting 3-4 exhausts on there, you're not going to move enough air, and your cards are going to overheat. Anyways, if you like this kind of style of content, you can let me know. I just wanted to do a quick channel update for us as well, just in case you guys were curious on this rig. And because it has been running stable, I have not been making any more content. It's kind of like, after spending a lot of time troubleshooting these rigs, I just, like, once it runs stable, I'm just kind of done with crypto for a bit. It's like, okay, it's running stable. I don't want to do anything else. I'm just going to leave it, like, just let it run, let it be. And if there's any more information, I will make an update video in the future. But what I find with my channel is I already made a lot of overclock setting videos. I already showed how I set up my rig. I already showed you what I look at when I buy a rig, how I want to set things up, why I want to space my GPUs properly, how much power I need, why I use PCIe to power risers, etc., etc. So a lot of the content's already made. I will be looking at different content to make in the future, but yeah, if you do like this content, definitely subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, goodbye, and good luck with mining.